Well, ladies and gentlemen, we knew this was true. We knew already that they were saying that the budget for Marvel was initially around 130 to 150 million dollars. We knew there was no way in hell that number was real. And now we have articles that are coming out after the bombshell leak that apparently the Marvels actually has a budget of a whopping 274 million dollars. That is 274 million without marketing, ladies and gentlemen. That is an astronomical number. That means that for this movie to break even, it is going to have to do an insane amount of money. And I just don't see this movie pulling it off. So let's get into this article, guys, from Bounding Into Comics. But of course, before we do, if you're new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm Shadowban as hell, and like the video to push us out into the YouTube algorithm. So it says, after Vanity Fair claimed that the Marvels clocked in with a $130 million budget, Forbes now shares the movie's budget is an enormous $274 million. Forbes just completely blew the lid on this movie, and we knew this was going to be the case. There is no way in hell a movie like this that has been reshot so many times, a movie like this that has been delayed, I think 5 times now. It's just crazy the amount of delays that this particular movie has had, and if it wasn't for the fact that they really need to get this movie out ASAP, they probably would have delayed it a 6th time, just being real with you, because there was talks of delaying it yet again for different reasons. It's just crazy. So let's get into it. So it says, the narrative about the Marvel's production budget quickly changed as soon as it began. Vanity Fair originally reported that the film's production budget clocked in at 130 million in their most recent expose about the film's director, Nia DaCosta, which, by the way, I've done a lot of videos on Nia DaCosta, and that woman is absolutely miserable. That woman really needs to stop doing Marvel films at this point. I mean, she really feels like she is the creme de la creme of just special directors, all because of her skin color. It's ridiculous. It says, however, Vanity Fair has since updated their article and removed any mention of the movie's production budget. Nevertheless, an archive exists showing that it is indeed reported. Costa is also still grappling with the breakthrough she's made, including the fact that at 130 million, The Marvels is the highest budgeted film ever helmed by a black woman. That's all she cares about. This is literally all she cares about. All she cares about is being the first black this, the first black that. That is literally all that matters to her. Nothing about the movie matters to her. She called it a Kevin Feige film. She said she's not even in charge of the movie. And I mean, who is in charge of Marvel movies? It's Kevin Feige. Even if he may not be the director, ultimately he is the final say. And this is what I said in my last video. But she took that as a personal thing. She took that as, oh, she's not in charge because she's black. She's constantly using her skin color to kind of either virtue signal or project some level of insecurity within herself. So then it says, given this reported budget, the success of the original Captain Marvel was called into question. Matt McGloin of Cosmic Book News wrote on X, so a sequel to a billion-dollar movie gets the lowest budget? Doesn't add up. You're absolutely right. It doesn't add up because that wouldn't be the case. Over at We Got This Covered, Danny Peterson speculated the lower budget meant the movie is on a smaller scale and thus doesn't need as large of a budget. He also claimed that the small budget could have been because Jude Law and Annette Bening were not returning for this film. Finally, he offered that the film is set in the present, so there's no need to use expensive CGI to digitally de-age Samuel L. Jackson. Financial analyst Valiant Renegade even called the $130 million budget into question, believing it was based off an earlier report from Forbes in April that claimed the budget was $130 million after just 2 months of filming. But again, we know that that just cannot be the case because it is constantly reshot, this movie. This movie has gone through so many delays, and yeah, maybe it was close to 130 and 150 million dollars initially, but the moment this thing got delayed XYZ amount of times and the amount of marketing that they constantly have to put out for this movie, yeah, it's gonna rack up really quickly. And if they have to reshoot, then yes, it is going to rack up even quicker. So I never believed for the slightest that this was a $130 million movie. I don't care how much more small scale it is. There is no freaking way this movie is $130 million. He stated the reality is that Disney spent for pre-production in the first roughly 60 days of principal photography for the Marvels $130 million according to the financial returns reported by Caroline Reed, who we frequently cite here on Valiant Renegade. That means that this $130 million is probably less than half of the final spend on the film. And of course, that is if they actually shot the film all the way through one time and were happy with it. But as is the case with Marvel Cinematic Universe films, there were tons and tons of massive reshoots for the film. I promise you, the final spend for the Marvels is going to be at or very near $300 million, if not more, he said. This is something that Vanity Fair should have caught, given Reed made it abundantly clear in her report from April that Disney also expects that the budgeted production costs will increase significantly due to ongoing obligations and costs required to implement safety measures and social distancing in line with government guidance. That is terrible. That is terrible that they still have to do this nonsense just to be compliant. I mean, I really don't agree with that at the end of the day. But of course, I mean, this is where we're at, and it's only going to get worse now that election season's coming. But I just like the article says, there's been so many reshoots for this film. We already knew that this film is literally probably in what's equivalent of development hell for movies, and it's only going to get worse. I really don't think this is going to be a well put together movie. I think it's going to be quite messy when it releases. I am expecting that it's going to be kind of all over the place. You're going to see little tidbits of what used to be versus what is now. You're going to see that, and it's very easy to see when a movie is in development hell, just like it's very easy to see when a video game is in development hell. It is all over the. It says Valiant Renegade would also be quickly vindicated as Forbes' Caroline Reed dropped a new report claiming the budget is actually upwards of $274 million. This latest report from Forbes states that the blockbuster budget is disclosed in company filings released yesterday by Disney's subsidiary, which made the movie. They show that over a 2-year period from the incorporation of the company to September 30th, 2022, it spent $274.8 million and banked a $55 million subsidy from the government of the United Kingdom where the movie was made. This brought its net spending down to $219.8 million. However, it's likely this is not even the final production budget, as the production company incorporated in the United Kingdom will likely continue to report its financial dealings for a number of years to come, as we've seen with Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, Avengers Endgame, and other Disney productions filmed in the United Kingdom. And if you guys are not aware, these particular movies, it came out after the fact, like years after the fact, that it was actually more expensive than they initially said. So these budgets all rose to astronomical numbers. And again, you got to remember, they don't get 100% of the dollar that is spent in those theaters. I know a lot of people just don't realize that. They don't get that. When they look at the numbers, they say, oh, look, it made 400 million and the budget is 300 million. So that means it profited 100 million. No, ladies and gentlemen, that is not how it works. It is an average of 50%. They get a little bit more domestically. They get a little bit less foreign. But ultimately, if you want to make the number easy to understand, it's about half that they get from the movie theaters. So if the film made $400 million in the theaters, that means they took home $200 million. You got to remember this. That's why a budget of $274 to $300 million is massive, because that means to break even, they have to make $600 million at the bare minimum just to break even. It's an insane number, even by today's standards, and I don't think the Marvels is going to reach it, but ultimately time will tell whether I'm right or wrong. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.